got some good news for your ears. More of that good stuff is coming up. And even better news for your hair. The best hair care is at Sephora. They've got all kinds of products for every kind of hair. From brands like Amika, Kerastase, Day, and K18. You knew where to get great audio. Now, you know where to get great hair care, too. Sephora. Good news for great hair. Shop hair care now at Sephora.com.
As a sports fan, I have to confess. Sometimes the game gets kind of boring. That's when I unfold my Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7 and use multi-window viewing on its large screen. Boring game? I'm checking out my fantasy baseball league at the same time. Score still 1-0? I'm replying to emails in the other window, scoring points with the boss. Semifinals finally getting exciting? I'm buying tickets to the finals and booking my flights. Can your phone do that?
The new Galaxy Z Fold 7. Get yours at Samsung.com.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine, Governor David Paterson. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg, and we're welcoming back to the show Senator Bill Haggerty of the great state of Tennessee, a good friend of ours, a wonderful leader of the United States Senate, former ambassador to Japan. Senator Haggerty is on the Foreign Relations Committee, Appropriations Committee, and the Banking Committee of the Senate. Senator Haggerty, a great pleasure to have you back on. I'm going to turn you over to Eric Levine for his searing cross-examination.
Likewise, Judge, and it's great to be back on with such an esteemed group. It's always good to be with you. Thank you.
Well, as I told the Speaker of the House when he was on the show, generally I measure the success of my cross-examinations by whether or not the witness is sobbing at the end. We'll try not to make you cry too hard. Anyway, so just for our audience to know, Bill Haggerty is clearly one of the most talented, if not the most talented guy in the Senate. So it is a real pleasure and honor to have him on the show. So welcome, Senator. So I guess two of the big pieces of news this past week in which you had a direct hand is the Genius Act and the recently negotiated Japan-U.S. trade agreement. But let's start with the Genius Act. I would venture to say that very few of our listeners know what it is. Why don't you tell us what it is and what it's supposed to accomplish?
Certainly. What I'd say in context, Eric, is this is a sea change from where we were not even a year ago. If you look back in the previous Congress and the previous administration, when Sherrod Brown was in charge of the Banking Committee and Joe Biden was in charge of the executive branch, there was essentially a war on crypto technology. There was a war on the blockchain, and it was virtually impossible to have any sort of certainty at all if you wanted to be in the cryptocurrency arena. What we were seeing is innovators in the digital assets arena moving overseas. People were avoiding the U.S. market. China developing the digital yuan, Europe developing the digital euro, and the United States being left behind. As we move into the 21st century, the digital age, we need a digital dollar to be able to compete. And we were not there until the gavel changed in January of this year. And I started this work last year. Our team has been working practically around the clock to get it in place. But what we have put in place now is legislation that it lays out the rules of the road and supports the opening of the digital asset arena in America. What it does is it allows for stable coins to be issued here in America, decentralized stable coins. And it's an important distinction, Eric. This means that private issuers will issue these coins, not the central bank, not the Fed. In fact, the legislation specifically and explicitly prohibits the Fed from issuing a central bank digital currency because no one wants the central government to be able to monitor our transactions and to choke point us at some point when we have another Democrat administration come in or it's Elizabeth Warren ever has her way. So what we've done is legislated a decentralized stablecoin that's backed dollar for dollar by U.S. Treasury securities. All of the disclosure requirements are in place to make certain that the coins are stable, they're backed, they're secure. We will then move from a very clunky payment system that was designed in the 1970s and 80s onto the blockchain, more secure and almost instantaneous. So if you think about transactions that took 5 to 10 days to clear, now they're going to clear on an almost instantaneous basis, which takes out a great deal of risk. If you think about that sort of time frame, 5 to 10 days, you've got counterparty risk. The other side of the transaction could have gone bankrupt in the meantime. You've got currency risk if it's a transaction that's going back and forth overseas. All of that goes away. And one additional benefit I'd like to highlight, this helps ensure that the U.S. dollar remains dominant in the world, that the U.S. dollar remains the reserve currency in the digital arena. Because anyone making transactions around the world in the digital arena would much prefer a digital dollar to a digital yuan or a digital euro. So this is an important step in dollar dominance, and because it has to be backed up one for one by Treasury securities, now what we will have is that the largest owner of U.S. Treasuries will be benign issuers of stablecoins, not China, not Japan. All of this is good for America. It's good for demand for U.S. Treasuries, which will help affect rates and lower rates, on particularly on the short end of the curve. It's extremely positive. Secretary Besson is thrilled that it's happened. The president is thrilled that it's happened. And I think the industry is welcoming this with open arms.
I think the greatest indication that this is absolutely the right way to go is that Elizabeth Warren is against it. So, kudos.
By the way, let the record be clear on that, Senator. That great laughter was from the former Democratic governor of the state of New York.
So, it's also important for our listeners to understand how critically important it is to the United States, not just economically, but just internationally and for our national security, that America remain and the dollar remain the reserve currency around the globe.
This was the only way to ensure it. Otherwise, our position was being eroded. And as you say, Elizabeth Warren was against it because she would trade off that advantage in order to obtain the control that would be afforded by having a central bank digital currency. That's the last thing that people who love liberty and freedom want to see, because we know what the government can do with an Operation Choke Point. We saw Barack Obama do it. We saw the Biden administration do it. Choke Point 2.0 under Biden. We can see that continue on and on and on. We have now prohibited the Federal Reserve from issuing such a currency, and it's all going to be decentralized. It's going to run on the blockchain, and it's going to be, as you said, a strategic advantage for America because it's going to advance dollar dominance in the digital world.
So let's shift gears to the Japan-U.S. trade agreement. Now, I would like to suggest that that the name of this be Japan-J-U.S. TA. So it's just a trade agreement, Japan-U.S. trade agreement. But has it actually been signed yet, and what's in it?
So I was in the Oval Office with the president yesterday going through the terms that were agreed. Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick came and joined our meeting, and we went through it. I think everyone is very pleased with the terms. The terms have been outlined. The final document, Eric, that's going to require a lot more papering, if you will, to get the final document done. This will be a very thick document. I've been involved. I think I'm the only member of the United States Senate at this current point in time who's been involved in negotiating trade agreements. We did 2 trade agreements with Japan when I was U.S. ambassador to Japan. We have a very significant agreement in principle here, such that the parties are willing to go public with the terms. What it does is it basically establishes a 15% tariff level. That's an increase in some areas. It's a decrease in others. For example, there has been for years a 25% tariff on Japanese trucks. That comes down to 15. But it also raises a tariff on vehicles to 15. So it's one that's going to net increase tariff revenues to America, but it's going to create certainty and it's going to level the playing field because Japan for years has had an inordinate trade deficit with the United States of America. And this gets at cutting that back. It opens up the Japan market finally to competition for U.S. goods. President Trump was adamant that this had to happen. As you mentioned, I served as U.S. ambassador to Japan in the first Trump administration, but in 1988, I moved to Tokyo for the first time when I worked for Boston Consulting Group. They sent me there for 3 years then. I was trying to help U.S. companies, Western companies, enter the Japanese market. It's always been excruciatingly difficult because of localization requirements, because of specificity there that can't be matched by foreign companies. This is going to open all of that. We're going to see regulations harmonized. That's going to mean greater economies of scale available to U.S. companies, frankly, making us more competitive with China. This is a very good thing, and probably the most important part and the most unique part about this deal is the commitment that the government of Japan made to invest $550 billion, that's billion with a B, in joint projects that we will do, infrastructure projects. I just left a meeting with a group of about a dozen Japanese leaders. They are here working on projects immediately We were talking about an Alaska pipeline project for LNG. We're talking about LNG infrastructure that will be utilized to receive that LNG from America. We are talking about critical minerals projects, and we have specific projects already in the process of being identified. The Japanese are here to make good on their commitment, and I could not be more pleased as I think about the strategic implications of having Japan step up and do this. And I think it's going to stand as a template, Eric, for other nations like South Korea to do the same thing.
So one quick question, I want to turn it over to the governor. So is this a situation where it's the devil's in the details, or are we basically on the goal line?
I think we're on the goal line with this one, Eric. I really feel good about what I heard, the way I heard the president, Howard Lutnick, our Commerce Secretary, Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, describe it to me yesterday midday. Then I met with the Japanese ambassador yesterday evening, and his description was almost identical to the way it was described earlier in the day. So I think that there is a true meeting of the minds, and the conversations I had today with the Japanese investment team further reinforce that. They are here to make good on this commitment. It's going to be massive, and I think that both of our nations are going to benefit. If you look at the results in the marketplace, the U.S. stock market was up. The Japanese stock market is up. This is a win-win proposition for both countries.
Governor.
Senator, based on your historical perspective, and I know we're running out of time, but it would certainly seem to me that the opposition to the Genius Act is really a byproduct of people not taking enough time to learn something and just rejecting it out of hand because there might be one good thing that comes out of it for them, but they've ignored the rest of the country and the marketplace.
I think that's a very good synopsis for some of the people that did not support it. And I think this has been typical. I would not have been able to pass this a year ago. Elizabeth Warren had an iron fist control over anything coming out of the banking committee. That's not the case today. And if you look at the debate that took place within the banking committee, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds on this, but Elizabeth Warren debated me for 4 hours, fighting me at every turn, trying to block this in the committee. And I was able to move half of the Democrats in the banking committee over to my side. I brought 5 with me and all Republicans to vote this out. She could only hold 5 Democrats herself. So what we've seen is a sea change, I think, in the Democrat Party. We've seen a sea change in control and influence within that party. And Elizabeth Warren, who wants centralized control and dominance over every transaction in America so it can be policed, so it can be choke-pointed, is losing that control. And what we see are newer members, younger members of the Democrat Party coming in, joining me on a bipartisan basis. I had 18 Democrats out of the 100 senators join me in the final passage of the bill. This is great for America, and we have a number of senators that can see it. And as you said, Governor, there are probably some that just followed their leader, Elizabeth Warren, and didn't bother to read the bill and understand how important or how good it was for America. But the newer members, the younger members came in, they saw it, they appreciate it, they understand it, and they're on board.
Jesse, your turn with the senator.
Senator, just to pick up on that, maybe you've discovered the game plan that the Republicans in the Senate should do. Just let Elizabeth Warren speak for 4 hours, and you can get by.
Wait, I don't think they're paid enough to listen to that. That's the problem.
See, there's always a catch, and that's why you have the lawyer in the room, or lawyers in the room. My question is actually just one. As I just saw the Genius Act, it said this is the first part. It's only the part 1, and that there are other parts of the framework coming forward here. If you could discuss what those other parts of the framework are, and then really for someone who is like me, I'm a dinosaur when it comes to cryptocurrency, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm still waiting for my $1 million from the prince, who I sent $100 in his email because he forgot his wallet. So, I mean, we have all that stuff going on here, but
I got 80 million.
You probably went to the international courts, that's why. And so, but how can you, first of all, what is the other parts of the framework of this? And number 2, how do you build confidence in the cryptocurrency? I mean, because if there's so many shenanigans that have been going on, even locally. I mean, several years ago, we had candidates running on a cryptocurrency agenda that were really, I mean, now they're in jail because they were using that type of system.
So, Jesse, you raise a bunch of great points. One, I want to distinguish again the difference between a stable coin and other cryptocurrencies. A stable coin is a dollar for dollar. It's dollar backed. It's tied to the U.S. dollar, and it's backed up by U.S. Treasuries. So that means it's stable, it's secure, and the value is always one-to-one known, and the Treasury security holdings are It has to be less than 93 days of maturity or cash, and that has to all be disclosed on a regular basis. So you know it's good and you know it's safe. With respect to other types of cryptocurrencies, that's where the market structure bill comes in place, and that's what we've taken under our wing right now to start work on. The Clarity Act was passed out of the House of Representatives. We brought it over to the Senate. We just put out this week what is known as a discussion draft, so we can request information from the industry and make sure that we are listening to and hearing from experts in the industry so that we get it right. But this will address things like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a speculative currency. It's a commodity. That is going to be under the jurisdiction of the CFTC in all likelihood, whereas other forms of value can be tokenized. Those likely would be regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission because they look more like a security. But what we want to avoid is trying to force a new technology, a new digital technology, into the old rules and regulations that were done back in 1933, 1934. We're going to take a thoughtful approach to this to try to craft regulations and a framework so that we can deal with a variety of things that will be transacted over the blockchain that have financial value and will be treated either like a security, a commodity, or be regulated like a bank, which is how stablecoins will be regulated. And I think it's going to take a number of weeks to work through all of this. Our goal is to try to have this wrapped up by the end of September, but I'm very optimistic that we're going to keep moving ahead, bringing market structure into play and really broadening the market for new digital currencies and new digital technologies. There's a lot of concern and a lot of confusion over what they call meme coins. That's like a baseball card, except it's digitized. And so Elizabeth Warren was expert at trying to confuse everybody with these meme coins. But what we're really focused on are business applications in the digital environment and how to create a framework that does deliver certainty and that allows our regulators to properly regulate it, not over-regulate it or kill it off.
Well, it's terrible that they're like baseball cards. My mother's threw all my cards out, and they were worth a fortune. Now they're all gone. Anyway.
Well, I hope the Prince will come to your rescue on that.
In fact, we have a call into the Prince right now, Senator.
He's my last best up. Senator Haggerty.
I'm going to have to say sayonara, but thank you all. It's always great to be with you.
Thanks for being with us. Take care.
All the best. Bye-bye.
This is Let the Record Show. We've just had a great conversation with one of our favorite United States senators, Senator Bill Haggerty of the great state of Tennessee, former ambassador to Japan, member of the Foreign Relations Committee, the Appropriations Committee, the Banking Committee, being very instructive about the new trade deal with Japan as well as the regulation of cryptocurrencies. Please stay with us. We'll be back in but a few moments with more interesting and important conversation on Let the Record Show. Please stay tuned.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia on the Red Apple Podcast Network.